Hello, my name is Helen Stevens and I'm the Deputy Director of Kaizen. I'm going to present to you today our mistake proofing SASH Plus bite-size module. So the objectives of the module are to understand the difference between a mistake and a defect, the purpose of mistake proofing, the importance of root cause analysis, 2 root cause analysis techniques, the 5 whys and fishbone, and finally the 4 basic elements of mistake proofing. So to start off with some definitions. Mistakes are inadvertent errors. So on average we each make 6 to 7 mistakes per day. Obviously some of these are quite small, i.e. coming down the stairs and forgetting what you went for upstairs. Some of them have bigger consequences. Defects, on the other hand, are mistakes that go uncorrected and get passed on. So if we look at the picture, machine A makes a mistake. It gets passed on to machine B, where it becomes a defect. If it had been stopped at point A, then it would have been a mistake. So what's good enough? So if we imagined 96% quality at SASH, this would equate to 32,850 defective patient meals a year, 8,029 defective items dispensed by pharmacy a year, 1,551 defective day case surgeries a year. If we then imagine 99.9% quality at SASH, this would equate to 821 defective patient meals a year, 201 defective items dispensed by pharmacy a year, and 39 defective day case surgeries a year. So 99.9% normally sounds quite good, but actually, if you were one of these patients, why wouldn't it be good enough? So 0 defects is the only acceptable amount. But how do we get there when people are not perfect? So this is where mistake proofing comes in. Mistake proofing involves changing the way work is done to reduce or eliminate the chances of error. It recognises that people are humans and will make mistakes, but it's about putting systems in place to detect mistakes and prevent them becoming defects. It's a key SASH Plus tool. The first element of mistake proofing is root cause analysis. To help you understand your service, you really need to understand the problems that you're trying to fix, so the defects you're trying to fix. You then need a structured approach to understand, once you've identified what the problem is, what the root causes to that problem are. So if we think about the model overleaf, you've got the weed, which is the problem. Then underneath the weed you have lots of roots, and there may be many different factors which are the cause of that weed, the problem. So we need to explore those different causes in order for us to truly affect the defect. So 5 whys is a really useful and easy to use root cause analysis tool. It's a technique which is used to explore the cause and effect relationships underlying a specific problem. So you start off with your problem statement and then you work through a series of whys which would relate to the previous why to try and find the solution or the root cause to your problem. So as an example, the problem, patient notes are not in clinic. Why? The medical records did not deliver them to the clinic. Why? Medical records were not informed that the consultant needed the notes for the clinic. Why? The patient was not on the clinic template. Why? The consultant added the patient at the last minute without informing the secretary. Why? The secretary was on annual leave. So you can clearly see it's a sequential process that you follow. And to check that you're not going down at a tangent or down a rabbit warren, you can go back up the chain and use the word therefore. So the secretary is on annual leave. Therefore, the consultant added the patient at the last minute without informing the secretary. Therefore, the patient was not on the clinic template. Therefore, medical records were not informed the consultant needed the notes for clinic. Therefore, medical records did not deliver them to clinic. So you can check actually your initial problem matches your potential solution. The fishbone diagram is another really useful and easy to use root cause analysis tool. This tool helps you categorise the many potential causes of a problem in order to identify its root cause. So in order to carry out a fishbone diagram, you put the problem or the defect in the head of the fish and then you work your way around the scales in a step-by-step approach. So this is an example of a fishbone diagram about patient delays for GI surgery. So you've got the problem in the head of the fish, which is day of service patient delays for general GI surgery procedures. Then around the fish, you've got various scales under different headings. So consideration is given to management environment factors, to people or manpower, to methods and processes, to equipment or machines, and to materials. So you work your way around the fish under each of those scales, exploring any potential contributing factors which may relate to your problem. So once you've identified your mistake and defect, so you've got your problem, you've then looked at the root causes of the problem. There are 4 elements of mistake proofing that can help you address those problems. So we've got inspection, standard work, visual control, and devices. And we'll now go through each one of those in turn with some examples. So inspection. This is checking work to ensure it was completed correctly. So there are different levels of inspection, ranging from level 1, where there's no inspection, to level 6. Level 6 is the gold standard, self-inspection with control. And you've got different levels in between that. So what I'll do is I'll talk through each of those levels in turn and give you some different examples. So these are some of the examples of the levels of inspection. So level 1 would be no inspection. And this is potentially where a patient receives the wrong meal. So they order the meal on their menu card, and actually the meal they ordered isn't the meal that actually arrives. This would be the customer or the patient finds the defect. An example of level 2, end of line inspection, may be in relation to TTOs that a patient has for discharge. So as the nurse is talking through the TTOs with the patient, they realise that an item is missing. So rather than the patient getting home and finding that the item is missing, the nurse picks this up. It's an end of line inspection. An example of level 3 inspection, self-inspection with judgment, may be the use of a checklist. For example, in the hood hub, the staff are asked to complete a checklist for each hood before it is issued. Obviously, this is reliant on their diligence to complete the checklist effectively, so there is an element of judgment involved. Level 4 is a successive check. So an example with this would be 2 nurses checking certain controlled drugs before they're given to a patient. So it will be I check them and then someone else checks them. That would be a successive check. Level 5 of inspection is self-inspection with warning. So when you go to save a document, an example would be, when you go to close a document, an example may be that you get a pop-up that says, are you sure you want to close without saving? That would be a self-inspection with warning. I could still choose to override that and click on no, but then the potential are that I'd lose my document. The final level of inspection, and that's the gold standard, is self-inspection with a control. This is where you physically are unable to make a mistake. So an example would be the anaesthetic gas hoses in theatres. You cannot connect the wrong gas to the wrong inlet. But is inspection actually enough? So you've been hired as an inspector and you have 20 seconds to count the E's in the next slide. So how many did you find? It's 66. Are you sure? So I wasn't very specific with my instructions. I just asked you to count the E's in the next slide. So did I mean in the text? Did I mean at the side of the text? Did I mean in the email link? This is where we need some standards. So standard work is defined as an agreed upon repeatable sequence of work assigned to an operator at a pace that meets customer demand. It's basically a documented method that documents the best current way to complete a task. The benefits of standard work include that it allows work to be done in the best way every time. It specifies the responsibility for each element of the task, i.e. who should do that task. It ensures the highest quality output as the work is designed in line with current best practice. It's the foundation for ongoing improvement. It ensures improvements are maintained, and it assists with training. So a visual control is a method, device or mechanism to visually manage operations. They're basically a countermeasure to create visibility or abnormalities in a process. So if we think about the road traffic network, how do people manage to get around without being specifically told what to do? Well, there are a variety of visual controls everywhere. You've got traffic lights, you've got yellow lines, you've got road markings, you've got signposts. These are all examples of visual controls. So these are some healthcare examples of visual controls. So shadow boards. A shadow board has been used in pharmacy here so that the bleeps that the staff use can be easily seen. So they can be seen which ones are there and which ones are missing. A Kanban is a visual cue that processes must begin. A Kanban can be useful for managing stock effectively. An andon is a warning light. So this is an example of a warning light outside a patient's bathroom when they're asking for assistance. Posters are also another example of a visual control. These are some of the posters around the trust advising staff about social distancing. We've also got sign-out sheets from when equipment is removed from a specific area. It denotes when the equipment was taken and where it was taken to, so it helps staff who next need the equipment to be able to find it. Another example is line demarcation. This marks out specific areas, so it highlights where objects can be put. So an example of this was used in the hood hub to map out where the various hoods need to be placed in preparation for collection. So I've now put some visual controls on this piece of text, so it's now more obvious which E's to count, and they're easier to count too. So this just proves that visual controls are quite a powerful mechanism to use. In order for visual control to be effective, however, it needs clear guidelines for its use. It needs management support during its implementation to support the staff with when and how they should use it. And there's no point having a visual control in place if there's not a standardised response or they're not kept up to date. Devices are another key element of mistake proofing. These help mistakes from occurring. They're termed poker yoke. This is a Japanese term. So there are two types of poker yoke. You've got a warning poker yoke and a control poker yoke. A warning poker yoke is a device that detects mistakes and alerts the operator. So an example of this would be the save pop-up box, which appears when you attempt to close a document before you've saved it. It doesn't physically stop you from losing your changes because you can override it, but it is a warning. Whereas a control poker yoke physically stops you from making a mistake, i.e. in theatres, the cath lab equipment will stop before it crushes the patient when it's being repositioned. There are sensors which enable this to be stopped. So that would be a control poker yoke. It physically stops a process. So often with mistake proofing, it's a combination of all the four elements: inspection, standard work, visual control and devices. So if you think about flying a plane, all of these elements of mistake proofing will be in place. So in summary, a mistake is an inadvertent error. A defect, on the other hand, is a mistake which goes uncorrected and is passed on. Our aim at SASH is 0 defects. Mistake proofing involves changing the way work is done to reduce or eliminate the chances of error. And root cause analysis is essential as it identifies the source of a problem and is required before corrective action can be taken. There are 4 key elements of mistake proofing: inspection, standard work, visual controls, and devices. A successful mistake proofing intervention is often a combination of all 4 elements.